Well, welcome to this month's webinar on AI implementation. My name is David Walters. I'm the Principal Consultant for AI Orchestration for Steam Powered Consulting. And this is the fourth in our series of webinars. So if you've seen any of the previous three, you'll know that we talk a lot about the preparation that you need to do in order to be successful at implementing AI. And in this month's webinar, we will be going through the anchors framework in some detail to give you an understanding of the 7-step process that we follow with our clients to ensure that their AI implementation is actually correctly done and they don't join the high failure rate group, which we see across this industry at the moment. So I'll just bring up the slides and then I will take you through the content for today. So this webinar has been actually customized specifically for rural electric co-ops, and the idea is that they are a group who need to look at AI seriously, but also have several different risk factors. Now, the same principles apply to businesses in general, but the content of this webinar specifically has been customized for the rural electric co-ops. So let me just move into the first slide. So just to introduce myself in a bit more detail, my name is David Walters. I started my career as a weapons engineer officer in the Royal Navy Submarine Service. I served on HMS Tireless, a nuclear hunter-killer submarine, and then moved across to HMS Opportune, a diesel special operations boat. After my sea time, I became the executive officer of the Nuclear Submarine Disposal Group, and I then was headhunted by the Canadian Forces, where I spent my career there as the submarine trials and equipment officer. After I left the Navy, I worked in the nuclear utility business as an emergency management and security consultant. Then I moved into the corporate world as a corporate crisis management consultant, and eventually back into engineering to become the head of product for the small gas turbine fleet for a multinational energy company. And there I also ran the Global Field Service Excellence Group. So across all of those different career paths, one thing that has stuck out as a significant guiding principle is that governance discipline is essential in environments where failure is not an option. And that discipline is exactly what the rural electric co-ops need to be applying today to make sure that they can successfully implement AI in their organizations without causing disruption to their systems or to their customers. So we are reaching an inflection point in AI implementation. There are some very strict deadlines coming up, which I'll talk about more later. But specifically for the rural co-ops, there are over 900 co-ops across the US, providing power to 42 million Americans. And there are some AI deadlines coming up, which will have a significant impact on this group. So just to give you some statistics, and you've probably heard of these if you've been on any of the previous webinars, but by 2018, 90% of B2B transactions will be conducted by autonomous agents, and that's according to the Gartner Research Group. Looking specifically to the problems faced by rural electric companies, according to NRECA, 19% of the co-op's workforce is eligible to retire within 5 years. And the statistics that we see across all industries is that only 6 to 7% of AI projects actually deliver value to the business. So that's an extremely high failure rate, much, much higher than for a normal IT project. And to look at the statistics in a bit more detail, some co-ops are facing anywhere between 40 and 60% retirement of their senior team within the next 5 years, which would be devastating to the organization if they were not able to capture the corporate knowledge and find a way of doing business when their experienced team takes retirement. The other thing, which is an industry-wide statistic, 74% of executives report that they regret at least one AI decision within the last 18 months. And the statistic goes on further and says that 50% of them fear for their job because of that decision. So for the rural electric communities, a small co-op cannot afford the disruption and the cost of a failed AI project. Every dollar that's wasted comes from the communities that they're there to serve. And these co-ops are facing the 2028 AI time crunch, which I'll explain in a few minutes. So looking at the January meeting of NRECA, they came up with 5 pillars for AI adoption. Firstly, that you need to have planning and that you need an AI champion and a current to future state roadmap. You need AI policies in place, and you must implement governance before deployment. You need a strategy for your data, and then you need to obviously be concerned about cybersecurity, and you need to engage with your workforce and create a pro-AI culture. One of the biggest mistakes that companies have made in the past several months is that we've seen AI being implemented, major layoffs happening. The AI doesn't perform as anticipated, and then the companies have to rehire all those people that they let go. So we do not subscribe to that approach. We treat AI as a human performance enhancer, not a replacement for human labor. So we have created a framework called Anchors, which I'm going to go through in detail later on in this presentation. And what Anchors does is it gives you a clearly defined process for successfully implementing AI in your organization. Where the NRECA 5 pillars do not help is that they don't tell you how to implement. They don't tell you how to design your workflows. They don't tell you how to manage data quality. And one of the big things, in my opinion, that's missing is they've missed the human in the loop governance model. And I'll talk in more detail about that later. And also, as I've said, implementing AI in your business is not an IT project. It's actually a corporate change management program. And if you don't adopt AI, if you don't adopt a change management mindset before looking at AI, you will be in the 93% failure group. Another statistic that I saw the other day comes from the Boston Consulting Group, and they've said that for a successful AI implementation, the effort needs to be shared in a 70-20-10 ratio. 70% of the effort needs to go into people, culture, and change management, 20% into technology and data infrastructure, and only 10% in the algorithms and the models. And what we see in most companies is that they invert this ratio. So they spend 70% of their project budget on the software licenses, and then governments and data and people are an afterthought. And that's why they have such a high failure rate. So again, thinking about the rural electric co-ops, they operate under the 5 principles. They are democratic member-controlled organizations. They have autonomy and independence. There is a strong element of education, training, and information, and there must be cooperation between cooperatives with a concern for the community. And so the way we would implement this using the Anchors framework is that there are no black boxes in the system. Everything is done above board and clearly available to the management team, so they can see exactly at each step of the process what has been done and what needs to be done. We don't lock any organization into a specific vendor, and so we want to see the best tool for the job across all of the opportunities that are out there. And as I said, we approach AI implementation as a form of human labor empowerment, not a replacement for the human operators. And again, looking at cooperation, once we have a model that works for an REC, then we encourage it to be shared amongst other members of the association so that they can all benefit from the lessons learned of the previous implementation. And the final pillar, concern for the community, we do not subscribe to the idea that AI should be used for mass redundancies. It should be used to empower and improve the value and the capability of your existing skilled and experienced staff. So the approach that we recommend to people, that we take with our clients, is SONAR, which is our initial assessment. And it's 30 questions. It takes the executive team about 7 minutes to complete. But this gives you a snapshot of your executive readiness to implement AI in your organization. CATS is our corporate AI transformation system. It's derived from the work of Professor John Kotter from the Harvard Business School, who is considered to be the world's leader in corporate change management. And his research says that 70% of change initiatives will fail without strong executive ownership. And as I said before, AI is not an IT project. It is a corporate change management program. And the final step in the process that we'll talk about today is the anchors framework. And this is a 7-step framework to de-risk your AI implementation, to give you the best chance of success and user adoption within your organization. So let's now go into more detail on the anchors framework. And as I said, there are 7 steps in the process: assess, normalize, configure, harness, oversee, run, and scale. And there is a mandatory quality gate in the middle of that process. And we say you should not move from one step to the other until all the activities in the prior step are successfully completed. So the A, assess business value creation. And you may remember on one of the previous webinars, we talked about the crisis that's facing AI implementation. And the crisis, the Chinese character for crisis, is derived from both danger and opportunity. So there's danger if you do it wrong. But if you take a high-level approach for change management and look at this as a way to optimize all of your business processes, there is clear opportunity to come out much more efficient and much more effective with a correctly implemented AI solution for your business. So the assessment phase is firstly 3 critical questions. Where are you today? Where do you want to get to? And how are you going to get there? And so the first thing we do is to map the as-is value proposition, and we look at both the internal and external value creation. And when we look at the external value, we look at your tangible and intangible value to your community. We use this phase to craft a strong future vision state for the organization. And this is part of the John Kotter, what he calls the 8 amplifiers, which is a compelling change narrative that drives the program and motivates the organization to achieve the goal. N stands for normalized processes. And the way we do this is we start with a leadership alignment workshop. We look at the processes which are working and which are not working, the ones which are good candidates for agentification. And then we will work with the executive team to find 1 or 2 processes which will give the best start to the operation. And selecting one of these processes as the prime candidate for agentification gives you what's called the planned quick win, which again is one of the John Kotter 8 amplifiers. So deliberately designing a quick win for the organization to gain the confidence of the team and to demonstrate to the organization that you are on the right track for long-term success. Once we know the workflows that need to be addressed, we then look at the processes that need to be addressed. We then go to a next level of detail, which is to break down the workflows. And this is done collaboratively with the subject matter experts in the organization. And at every step, we look at the data required to complete that step in the workflow. We look at the source of the data, the destination. We also look at the type of AI that you need to execute that step. And again, one of the big mistakes that people make is they assume because they're using AI, they have to use generative AI for every step in the process. That's a risky decision to make. And the reality is that 70 to 80% of the steps in your workflows are deterministic. Now, the benefit of deterministic is it's a very linear if this, then that analysis. So there's no variation. There is no generative AI. And generative AI is based on an improbability or a randomness principle. So if you're trying to have a governed process where you have clearly defined outcomes, the less generative AI you can use, the better, the safer your governance becomes, because there's less variability in the output of the agent. So we would always recommend that your default position should be to steer away from generative AI and look at deterministic solutions wherever possible. We then build in a mandatory quality gate, what we call the data quality gate, and we assess the data against 4 criteria. Is the data accessible? Is the data complete? Is the data trustworthy? And is the data consistent? And I've worked with different work groups in the past where their data was so variable from one month to the next when they were preparing their risk portfolio. One month they were looking at being hundreds of millions of dollars in the black, and the next month when the project managers updated their risk management spreadsheets, it looked like the company was about to go bust. So the inconsistency in their data was causing huge problems for the risk management team. And that's something that had to be addressed before we could roll out any solution for them. Only when you pass the quality gate do we then move to step 4. And this is a mandatory gate. And we recommend that you do not pass through this gate until you're absolutely sure that you have your data management and your data situation sorted out. IBM reported that it costs between 10 and 1,000 times more expense to fix a problem after implementation than it does to fix the problem before you implement any sort of technology. So let's assume that you've been able to pass the quality gate. We now come to the first part of the technology build, which is to harness the purpose-built agents. And what we recommend is you build 1 agent per workflow step. And for the quick win agent, we want one that we can deliver within 30 days that will provide real value to the operators and the users. And user adoption should be, we recommend, one of the primary KPIs that you use to manage the performance of your program. If you get user adoption, you will get good feedback. You will be able to tweak and refine and correct the agents. If you build an agent that nobody uses, you have no feedback. You have no knowledge of whether this is going to be valuable to the business or not. So agent adoption, user adoption is, in our mind, the critical KPI that you should be looking at as you prepare for the implementation rollout. Once you've built your first agent, we then recommend that you use what we call HITL controls. HITL stands for human in the loop. And this is where you have a subject matter expert monitoring the input to the agent and also monitoring the output from the agent. And then as that first agent is built and validated and approved, you then move to the next agent in your workflow, and so on and so on. So for every individual agent that you build and deploy, you have this HITL quality control point. And only when all of the agents you need for your process are deployed and each one has passed the HITL assessment, do you then look at going to connecting them together. And that's where you would go to what's called HOTL, human over the loop. And we recommend a tool called a contextual integration layer. The one that we use is called Mygentic. And this allows you to connect all of your individual agents to an integration layer, which already has the context for your business. So it has the data for the business. It's had your guardrails and your governance requirements all built into the integration layer. Once you get to the HOTL situation, then the agents are talking to each other, and the human quality control is not at the individual agent level, it is over the process. So somebody would have oversight of the data going into the beginning of the agentified workflow and then observes the quality of the output. And this is where you ensure that you have quality before you go business-wide with your implementation. If you find that you have failure points in the in the agentic workflow, then you stop and go back to the previous step, go back to the HITL quality control step, and identify which agents are causing the variability or causing the problem that is making the whole end-to-end workflow fail. Once you have passed the HOTL quality step, then it's a case of scaling up to the next process, the next workflows, and do these one at a time. This is a case of going slow with quality rather than going fast to failure. So step by step, a deliberate managed approach is the much more safe way of delivering AI and implementing AI in your business. And one of the things, again, that we recommend, which is often overlooked, is that the next process, the next workflow that you look for identification shouldn't just be the one that has the highest score when you did the initial assessment. You need to look at the imbalance, because if you identify part of your business process and it's successful, you will then have multiple improvements in that one area, but the rest of the organization, which is still running on manual processes, may not be able to keep up. So I'll give you an example. If you think about sales and marketing, if you decide to identify your marketing process as your first one out the gate, and you are successful and you increase your lead flow by a factor of 10x, then the next question is, can your sales team handle a 10x increase in opportunities? Or do they become the bottleneck that then means that the value you got from your marketing effort is wasted? Similarly, if you have a 10x improvement in your sales process, then the question is, looking back into your overall business function, can your operations, your manufacturing, your logistic teams handle a 10x increase in demand? So this is where observing the business as a whole and looking at any imbalances that may be caused by your AI implementation is a critical step for your move forward process. And that's something that we recommend. Always look at the impact on the business as a whole, not on an individual process or an individual task, and make sure that you are not creating critical imbalances that will cause the process to fail as you roll out more and more agentified workflows. So to bring this to a real world situation, 2028 is not a generic planning horizon. It is an operational deadline. As we said, from the research from Gartner, 90% of B2B transactions will be done by autonomous agents in 2028. And so if your co-op is not procurement ready to interact at the agentic level, you will face structural disadvantage, both in your ability to offer your power to your community, but also in your ability to procure services, goods and services from your B2B providers. If you don't engage with agentic procurement, you won't suffer small losses. You will find yourself invisible to 90% of the marketplace. Another issue is and this is specific to the RECs based on the NRECA analysis. If 19% of your senior staff are eligible to retire within 5 years, that would be a huge drain on your corporate knowledge base. And from some of the statistics that I've seen, as much as 40 to 60% of the experienced staff in the rural co-ops are eligible for retirement in that time frame. And once that knowledge walks out the door, it is impossible to get it back. And this is where AI, if done properly, and if you think about what you're trying to achieve, you can actually solve this problem very, very quickly. I mentioned Mygentic as being the contextual integration layer. The next version of Mygentic is going to be released in the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be called Cogentic. And this will allow you to build multiple knowledge brains in a single platform. So the way that you can address the corporate brain drain would be to create a dedicated agent, an executive assistant for each of your senior staff. They then load their way of working, they load their information, they load their procedures, their decision making into that agent. to act as an assistant to them to improve their performance and increase the value that they can bring to the business. But when they do come to retire, all of that experience is now captured by the agent and is available to the organization when the new people come in to replace the retirees. So as a very quick win, using the cogentic contextual using the contextual integration layer is a very quick win to address the knowledge drain that is a serious concern for many RECs. The capability gap is widening. You can't afford to sit on the bench. According to John Kotter's research, it takes 3 years as a minimum to effectively implement a corporate change management program. And if you look at 2028 as being the deadline to have agentic procurement in place, that means that you need to be starting in 2025. So in real terms, you're a year late getting started. And what this means is that you are at risk of being forced into agentification. And the more pressure you're under, the more external forces on you as you try and implement AI, the greater the risk of bad decision making, rushing to a solution, and then building inherent risk into your business processes. Now, there are many state associations who've already established AI task forces, and they're well into the research of these problems. But the reality is, the sooner you engage, the sooner you start thinking through this process, the quicker you'll be able to start implementing AI into your organization, and the more runway you will have to do that task correctly. So that's all I have for today. I've not seen any questions coming into the chat, so I'll assume that everybody was happy with what I presented today. Obviously, if you have any questions, you can send us a message through LinkedIn or via email, and I'll be happy to answer them. As a thank you for staying to the end of this webinar, I'm giving away the Anchors framework as a downloadable document. So just hit the QR code there, and it will take you to a download page where you can receive the document. And if you do have any questions, or if you want to talk through the specifics for your business or for your rural electric co-op, I'm happy to offer a 30 minutes executive call with you, completely free. Again, just hit the QR code, book some time with me, and I'm happy to spend time with you to help you think about how you can best start with your AI journey for your business. The other thing I would recommend to you is to follow us on LinkedIn. The link for the business page is down there. This is where we publish all of our latest research and information. So if you want to get the latest information that we have about successful AI implementation in your business, follow us on the LinkedIn business page, and we'll be happy to provide that information to you. So I'm Dave Walters. I'm the principal consultant for AI orchestration at Steam Power Consulting. And I'd like to thank you for the time that you've spent. And I look forward to talking to you in the not too distant future to help you succeed with your AI implementation. So if there are any other questions, I've not seen any coming in, but please feel free to send information to us, and I would gladly answer them personally to you when you have a question. So we're just on the 30-minute mark. I won't keep the webinar open any longer. So as I say, there are no questions come in. So that's it for today. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the opportunity to share the best practices for successful AI implementation. And as I said, if you want a copy of the Anchors framework, we're happy to share it with you as a free download. Just click the link that I showed you in the previous slide, and we'll send that to you directly. Thanks again for your time.